Welcome to another edition of the Bodybuilding Legend Show. I'm your host, John Hansen, and we are broadcasting live from the Powerhouse Gym in downtown Tampa, Florida. On today's show, we have a very special guest, one of the greatest bodybuilders of all time, Mr. Lee Haney, 8-time Mr. Olympia. In part one of our interview today, Lee is going to talk about how he got started in bodybuilding. When he started competing as a teenage bodybuilder, he won the Teenage Mr. America contest in 1979. And then began his incredible career in 1982 when he competed the first year the MPC started, and he won the very first Junior Nationals in 1982, and then he won the very first MPC Nationals in New York City, beating out such bodybuilders as Mike Christian, Bob Paris, Matt Mendenhall. And then Lee went on to win the World Championships, the Mr. Universe contest in the heavyweight class out in Belgium, beating out Ralph Mueller from Germany and Gunnar Rosbo from Norway. And then Lee started his pro career in 1983, first competing in the Pro World Championships. And then he went on to the Night of the Champions contest in New York City, which he won. And then he did his very first Mr. Olympia contest in 1983, taking third place behind Samir Bannout and Mohamed Makaway. So in part one of our interview, Lee's going to talk about all of those competitions and how he prepared and his training. He's also going to talk about his training with Rich Gaspari in 1984, which was a very successful year for both of them, as Lee went on to win the Mr. Olympia contest, his very first Mr. Olympia contest, and Rich won the Nationals and the Universe. That was a great year for both of them. So we've got a great interview with the great Lee Haney coming up right after our sponsors. Stay tuned. You're going to love this interview. We'll be right back with the Bodybuilding Legend Show right after this. Check out NFE All Natural Warrior Supplements, featuring pure isolate protein made with natural stevia flavor, 1 gram of sugar and no fat. NFE Trim, thermogenic fat burner, boost your metabolism, suppress your appetite, build strength, develop muscle, and shed that body fat. Go to NFE.com today.
NFE stands for No Freaking Excuses. All right, welcome to the Bodybuilding Legend Show, and I have a very special guest this week, Mr. Lee Haney, 8-time Mr. Olympia, a true legend in the sport, and one of the best bodybuilders, no doubt about it, in the history of bodybuilding. How you doing, Lee?
I'm doing. What do you mean, one of the best?
Best.
I felt that, man. I'm feeling that. One of the best. You see this? Hey, man. The record is there.
Let me start again.
Undefeated. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the best careers ever.
Hey, I heard the little old lady said, "Mighty poor dog, we don't want to wag his own tail, you know." So I'm wagging my tail a little bit.
All right,
okay.
I'll wag it for you today, Lee. Well, Lee, let's start at the very beginning. I know you started lifting as a teenager, and I believe you lived in South Carolina, right?
Right, town called Spartanburg, South Carolina.
Right. And I just read an article not too long ago on muscular development where you were talking about your very first contest and how you started competing, I think at 16 years old, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. That was, man, what an experience. And it was there that I really fell in love with bodybuilding and felt that, hey, man, this is what I got to do. This is what I want to be.
Uh-huh.
And, of course, I didn't place. but I was told by a lot of the people there that they felt I had a lot of potential.
Mm-hmm.
And I needed to get some real posing trunks because at the time I was wearing underwear that I purchased from Kmart. You know, humble beginning.
Yeah, exactly. So you were 16 when you first did your first show, huh?
Right. Hmm.
Okay. And didn't you play football also, Lee? Because I remember reading that you broke your leg like twice, and then that's how you sort of got into bodybuilding.
I first started out playing football. I wanted to be a professional football player. During my junior year in high school, I had my left leg broken. I played only one game that year, so I was back in the weight room preparing for the next season. And after that next season did get started, which was my senior year, I received a break to my right leg. And there I was back again after only 4 games in the weight room again. So I said, listen, this is just not for me. And so I then decided to get into bodybuilding full time because I had spent 2 years in the weight room. So there wasn't any use of letting that go to waste.
I sure did. It started out as football.
Okay.
You know, getting stronger and wanting to not to get my butt kicked on the field. So I felt weight training would help me, you know, beat the guy in front of me.
Yeah.
So that's how it sort of began. But during my first year of football, I ended up spraining my right leg after the second game. Put me back in the weight room, so I'm getting ready for the next year. I went in weighing roughly about 150, came out weighing 175. Then the senior year, high school football, after the 6th game, I broke my ankle. Went in weighing about 175, 180, came out weighing 212, 217 pounds.
Wow.
I then knew that, hey, you know, maybe this bodybuilding thing is more where I need to be than football.
Yeah.
I still was able to get a scholarship because the education was very important.
Mm-hmm.
Getting the free education was a real nice deal.
Yeah.
But during my first, I guess my first year of heading off to Livingstone College in Salisbury, North Carolina to play ball for the summer, I then decided, listen, I would love to get more into the bodybuilding, but at the same time, bodybuilding wasn't offering a scholarship.
Yeah.
So I got a hold of one of my guidance counselors, and he made a few phone calls, and I was able to receive what is called the Basic Education Opportunity Grant, which allowed me to continue going to college and to forego football and put more of my energies into my studies and bodybuilding.
Okay. What inspired you to get into bodybuilding? Did you start reading the magazines, or was there certain bodybuilders you saw who really made you want to be a bodybuilder?
Well, during that time, you know, the magazines were always available at the drugstores.
Yeah. My
My parents would go out shopping. I would run to the magazine stands and read everything I could get my hands on. And I would see people like Berto Fox, Roddy Robinson, and of course Arnold. And that inspired me a great deal. And of course, during that time, Incredible Hope was on the air, Lou Ferrigno, and man, after seeing all of that and being pumped, who wouldn't want to be a bodybuilder?
Right.
But when I was 6 years old, I dreamed of being Samson and Hercules. Even as a kid. I never would forget one day I'm hanging around in the yard with my older brother, and I picked up this boulder, and I visualized myself being Samson and thought I was strong enough to throw it over my dad's car. It didn't go over the car. It landed in the back glass. My dad, after he heard that rock impact the glass on his car, he came out with veins bulging in his neck. And when you talk about genetics, I got mine from my dad.
Right.
He had huge chest, big arms, thick thighs, big cash. And he said, "Who did it?" And of course I said, "My brother did it." He got the crap beat out of him.
Oh, really?
So that dream of being Samson and Hercules, it started when I was 6 years old. I always wanted to be that.
Yeah.
It is so funny that when my dad looked at me, looked at him, my brother being 3.5 years older than me, he couldn't believe that this little bitty guy picked up this boulder.
Mm-hmm.
But what he didn't know that was Samson and Hercules inside of that little body.
Yeah.
Of course, my brother beat the crap out of me every time he thought about it after that. But that's sort of how it began, as a fantasy.
Wow, at that age. Now, I'm glad you mentioned your parents, because I remember reading a magazine when you first started coming on the national level. I think Greg Zulak wrote it, and he said that your mom was like 6 feet tall, right? And your dad was a big guy too, so you obviously got the best genetics from both of them, right?
Oh, yeah. Genetics is a huge part of having a good foundation to begin with.
Yeah.
You know, it does put you at an advantage, but then it can also be a disadvantage.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of athletes that I've known with great genetics, because they didn't have the desire and the heart, didn't go far.
Yeah.
I look at one of my good buddies, Rich Aspiring, and I knew Rich mom and dad, who were small people.
Yeah.
I didn't see any muscle anywhere on his dad. Although his dad was a real hard-working man,
Yeah.
but Rich had to work hard for everything he got. And because of having that heart and desire, it made him one of the best the sport has ever known.
Right.
So you can't throw everything into genetics. You know, I was blessed to have them, but also blessed to have the desire to be the very best that I could be in the sport.
Yeah. Now, reading that article on muscular development, after you did your first contest at 16, you said you did the same show, right, a year later, and you were like 25 pounds heavier.
Yes, I sure did. As a matter of fact, staying consistent to the training, consistent to the nutrition, and consistent to, everything that I've read.
Yeah.
One of the people that I really drew to a lot and still admire today is Robbie Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
And Roy Callender. Everything that Robbie and Roy would write, I would mimic it. Love Robbie's back. I love his chest. His arms is out of this world. I never got Robbie Robinson on. I like to think that I got the chest, I got the back,
right?
I got the legs and those things. But his biceps, Robbie still, I feel, have the best biceps ever.
Yeah.
Perfect peaks on both sides. And
Right.
Roy's back was so thick.
Yeah.
His lumbars would hang with beef.
Right.
So I always wanted that look, man. So
Yeah.
I guess that's where I got my back from.
Yeah.
And then for Franco Colombo, golly, Franco was the same height even when you roll him on his side. He was so wide.
Right.
So, man, those were the best backs in the business there.
Talk about some of the training you did, because when I was reading that article, you said that the guy who owned the gym was a power lifter, and he showed you that those heavy basic movements really added to your physique and really helped build the foundation for bodybuilding.
Oh, yes. In order to be a great bodybuilder, you have to use a large portion or percentage of powerlifting movements.
Right.
You have to develop your foundation. And I don't know if you remember, but years ago, before the NPC began, the AAU was sort of in charge of bodybuilding, but powerlifting meets. And what would happen at the end of the day, you would have your bodybuilders to come on stage sometime at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
After powerlifting meets had finished.
Right.
So I've been on stage at 1 o'clock in the morning before. So during that entire day, I had the experience of watching powerlifters do their thing and to get knowledge and information from that. So that helped me a great deal, along with the owner of the fitness center, which is called Nautilus Fitness Center, that I train out of in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and the YMCA. They had power lifters there. And so I was able to learn the importance of bench pressing, proper form, proper technique, and also rep range when it comes to developing mass, because it is different.
Yeah.
It's different, but once you develop that foundation, the sky's the limits beyond that.
Yeah.
So I really attribute powerlifting to a great deal of my success. Now, of course, in the world of bodybuilding, we try to implement both of them, foundational for powerlifting, and then, of course, the bodybuilding, rhythmic, quality style movements to get the shape and the form of the muscle. You have to put the two together, because bodybuilding is so high in repetitions. You got to be careful not to try to use power movements in high repetitions. If you do that, you will tear yourself up.
Yeah.
And we see a lot of that in athletes being injured.
Okay. Also talk about the training you did back then, Lee, because people today may not realize, but back in like the 70s, there weren't a lot of gyms and there weren't a lot of machines. And I see a lot of guys today, a lot of young guys today doing a lot of machines, a lot of cables. But back in the day, all we really had was barbells and dumbbells. And there were real serious gyms. There were smaller gyms, but it was guys in there that really wanted to lift heavy and train hard. So you were doing a lot of movements like bench presses, squats, barbell rows, and things you learned from the magazines, correct?
That's correct. There's nothing like the foundational movements is what gave bodybuilding its life and bodybuilders their life.
Yeah.
The best physiques in the world began that way. And the best physiques I feel in the world today are still using the same training principles.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I emphasize to younger athletes, before you go to a cable crossover, develop a chest first.
Right.
So that goes back to your basic foundational movements. You shouldn't be doing cable curls for biceps when you haven't done barbell or heavy dumbbell curls to develop the muscle.
Right.
So
right.
cable has its place, but not in the foundational development stages of a physique. I only use cables to polish, and that's when I'm getting ready for a competition.
Right.
Last so many months or so before a competition. But other than that, all season is always using, your fundamental basic movement. You can't get away from them.
Right, right. So now when you're competing, let's go to 1979. That was the year you won the Teenage Mr. America. And I think you were also in a contest with Phil Williams, right, who eventually won the Nationals a couple years after you did. And I think he beat you in that one show, the Coastal USA, and then you beat him at the Teenage America, correct?
Yeah, that's right. They gave Phil a gift.
Oh, really?
He was given a gift. Apparently they felt sorry for him. He traveled so far and all of that.
Uh-huh.
But Phil was a great guy. I love Phil. We had a wonderful time together. Back during that time, and it was a very special time. It's always different when you're learning the sport.
Yeah.
You smell the oil. You're backstage. It's all about fun of it. It's all about the experience and so forth. And I never will forget that. It was very good, a great learning experience for me. I think a lot of time the exposure to bodybuilding from where I'm from, a little town called Spartanburg, South Carolina.
Yeah.
I never even wanted to miss South Carolina, So the experience and the in comparison to some of the other athletes, maybe come from places like California, New York, or Florida, with a degree higher.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt in some ways, presentation-wise, they were at a slight advantage.
Okay.
As far as the physique is concerned, if you can have the greatest physique, but you don't have the ability to display it,
yeah,
that can put you at a disadvantage. And I felt that's the way it was for me during that time. And of course, I was a taller athlete. Hitting the stage at 5'11", over 5'11" is tall.
Yeah.
And with that, it takes a longer period of time to develop. But once you get it with height, you are forced to be reckoned with.
Mm-hmm.
The field was the short athletes.
Yeah.
So that gave him an advantage for having size a lot earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But when I caught up, I had him for lunch.
So let's talk about that Teenage Mr. America. That was in Detroit. And people today may not realize, because the teenage bodybuilding has sort of really died off compared to what it was back in the 70s and 80s. But the teenage divisions back then were incredible, right? I mean, there was a lot of competitors and really good quality competition.
Eddie Brown. Do you remember Eddie Brown?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, Eddie looked great.
He
thick. Looked like miniature Robbie Robinson.
Yeah.
Great biceps, great chest, and of course you had Phil during that time. It was some awesome guys during that era, and some of them went on to become great champions. Mm-hmm. And then some of them, remember there was one kid named Palopa. He won the Atlantic he won the Coastal USA, the Teenage Coastal USA.
Okay.
That was put on by Doc Neely.
Yeah.
Back during that time. He won it, and I think I placed second to him.
Okay.
But he was a great athlete. But I haven't heard or seen anything since that time. He was there to Teenage America too.
Okay.
I beat him in that particular competition. But there were some awesome teenagers back then. And there are some great ones coming up now. As I travel to different parts of the country, showcasing my IFS certification program. I get to talk to a lot of the athletes, and particularly during the athletes meetings, so I get to meet a lot of the young up-and-coming guys.
Yeah.
And I'm amazed at what I'm seeing. I've seen some Frank Zanes out there.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't seen any mass monsters, but I've seen some young men that really got it going on with the small waist, the nice taper, and I hope they maintain that because, a lot of people are going for the mass now, and they're losing that nice balance that people are drawn to that made our sport popular.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm seeing a re-emergence of that.
Yeah.
That is starting to re-emerge in the new physique. Sean Rowland that's out there. Of course, Phil Heath is a nice version of the tapering waist and so forth. Yeah. So I like what I'm starting to see now. So bodybuilding, I think, is trying to recapture its soul.
Yeah.
What it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I just saw a kid at the Southern States, Peter Potter show out in Fort Lauderdale about a week or two ago, and he won the teenage, and they also gave him the most promising award. And this kid wasn't a big guy, he was only a bantamweight, but just great genetics, small waist, his muscles really popped. And I interviewed him afterwards, and he said his idol was Frank Zane.
Yeah.
And he said he wants to develop a physique like Frank Zane. He learned his posing from Frank Zane. So I thought that was really great to hear,
Yeah, that is great to hear and to see.
Yeah. So after you won that Teenage Mr. America, Lee, how did you feel? I mean, did you feel you've got really a great future in the sport of bodybuilding? Because to win a big national title like that had to make you feel on top of the world, huh?
Oh, man, it felt great. I mean, because I've looked at people like Dennis Tenorino. I think Dennis Tenorino won the Teenage America.
Yeah.
I believe Chris Dickerson did also.
Boyarko, yeah.
The Bodybuilding, there's several guys who won that show, and they said to me that, listen, if you've achieved becoming the best built teenager in the United States, then that says that there's a probability, if you continue to work hard and sacrifice, that you can go on to the next level. And so, man, I was fired up more than ever. And a year or so later, at the age of 20, the Mr. USA came around.
Yeah.
That was being held in Florida. I think Peter Potter or John Meese put on that particular show. Okay. And I played fourth.
Yeah.
So I'm like, whoa, man, I played fourth amongst these giants. And I was the second largest athlete in the event. I think I weighed 224 pounds then.
Wow, I remember reading that. Yeah, they said they made mention of the fact that you were 20 years old and you were one of the biggest guys in the show.
Yeah, man, that was, wow. I was really on fire at that.
Now, how did that feel going into a big national level show against open men? So you're competing against any age.
That felt incredible. Because I think Dave Rogers won that particular show.
Yeah.
And you got Georgia, then you got South Carolina. At the time, I was in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and then Dave was here in Atlanta, Georgia. Spartanburg, Georgia at the time, training at Doc's gym. So I felt good about that, and I felt I had a chance, and looking at the competition, my posing still needed some work. I mean, how many guys around the town, where I live, actually knew how to pose? They had a couple of guys who had competed in the past, but they still wasn't within reach and distance to sort of tutor me in that area. We had great guys like Joe Means, we had Sonny Arnold, we had Ron Blackman, a friend of mine, Danny Rogers. Danny showed me a few things when I started training at the YMCA. So we had a few good people that was good. And another guy, a guy named Keith Benefield. All these are guys from that South Carolina area that that were in competition that had competed before. So as I saw them presenting, at the stage, in competition, I got a bit here and a bit there.
Yeah.
So that was enough to keep me rolling.
What was your weight from the Teenage Mr. America to 1 year later when you did the Mr. USA?
I weighed 212, 213 pounds of Teenage America, and I was 224 for the USA.
Okay.
So I put on roughly about 12 pounds.
Yeah.
Man, and that's a lot.
That is a lot, yeah.
But then again, I just know in my heart, I've never been a light heavyweight. I've never been a light heavyweight.
Yeah.
Because my mom has never been a light heavyweight either. So, and again, it goes back to your genetic blueprint.
Right.
That made a huge difference. And of course, working hard, and eating good, and staying on top of all the other things you got to do right. The right training programs, the powerlifting foundation. So all of those things made a difference in making me the person, making me the young champion that I had become.
Yeah. Now after that, I remember reading you had wrist surgery, right? And then you took a year off.
Right. I had what is called a ganglion cyst on my left wrist.
Okay.
And which caused pain when I'm trying to bench press or curl and that sort of thing. So I had to have it removed. And during that time, of course, there was no weight training going on.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine opened a fitness center called the Olympian Fitness Center in Spartanburg, South Carolina. It's amazing. Just all of us, we were in college together. And so after we finished our last year in college together, we said, hey, man, let's get together and open up a gym.
Yeah.
So both our parents borrowed money, and we opened a gym with, I think, about a $10,000 investment, plumbing and all of that stuff. Of course, our dads jumped in there and helped us, and we got it up and going. But that was like the haven for us. And then a lot of other younger guys coming up. So we had, it was just fun. Just training, eating.
Yeah.
That's all we did. We just lived to train.
Right.
And that was an awesome time. And I really feel that was one of the most beneficial parts of my development.
Mm-hmm.
We would take pictures, try new exercises, add this, that. I never would forget, I started doing the trap movement where I would bring the bar behind to the rear, behind my back,
right,
and bring it up just like so to the rear, because your traps are to the rear.
Yeah.
Tried that. I said, okay, let's take a picture of before and after. So we took a picture of just when we first got started with that particular movement, took another one 6 weeks later. Could not believe the difference.
Really? Huh.
And that became a staple in my trap development.
Yeah. I remember you always did that exercise.
Yep, it worked, man, and we figured that out at the Olympian Fitness Center.
So you took 81 off, and then in 1982, that's when the MPC really got started. And I believe you did, what was the local show you did, Lee? Was it Coastal USA?
The Atlantic USA.
Oh, Atlantic USA, okay.
Atlanta, Georgia. So that was my opening qualifier in 1982.
Yeah.
And I came down for that show, and at that show, there were several guest posers. Tony Pearson was one of them.
Okay.
And of course, Tony, he was always in fantastic shape.
Yeah.
That is another all-time great physique, Tony Pearson.
Yeah, absolutely.
The vacuum, great lats, and his presentation was out of this world always.
Yeah.
So it was there that I met him. And after the show, or part of the middle of the show, I had a lot of people come up and compliment me and said, man, you look just as good as Tony Pearson, not better. So that really, got me going after hearing that. And then Tony, of course, greeted me and said hello. And I won that show, which then qualified me for the Junior Nationals. And so I was on the way after that. And then the Junior Nationals came up a few months later. And see, and with those who are watching us by Skype, but we'll be watching the show.
Yeah.
During that time, there was several qualification rounds you had to make it through. You just couldn't turned pro by winning the NPC Nationals.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, 1982 was the first year for the NPC Nationals.
It was, yeah.
So I first qualified by winning the Atlantic USA, which was a regional show, qualification. Then it allowed me to qualify for the Junior Nationals, which I don't know, but I think I could have skipped over the juniors, I believe. I'm not sure. But anyway, I entered the Junior Nationals, which was held in New Orleans. Tony Little was in that particular show, and I won that one.
Mike Quinn too, right, Lee?
What's that now?
Mike Quinn, he was in your class too, right?
Yep, Mike Quinn. And Mike was a monster. He
Yeah.
was back. Man, he had some guns on him.
Yeah.
Wow. So after winning that show, I then qualified for the NPC Nationals. So, but the Junior National was the first NPC event. So I won that one in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Then the NPC National was held in New York, and I won that one. And man, after doing that, next thing you know, you have the IFBB World Championship.
Yeah.
And I headed to Belgium and competed with guys from all over the world for that particular title. And at the end of the night, to my surprise, I was the heavyweight, IFBB World Champion.
Yeah.
And I knew at that time, man, I'm on the way. And I'm standing there, the after party. And the gentleman from Germany, promoter from Germany, walked over and said, Lee, would love for you to come back over and do a guest appearance. And I had never, okay, I'm getting paid.
Right.
I'm getting paid trying to make some money.
Right.
And not knowing how to negotiate what to ask for, I turned to Mr. Mannion, Mr. Jim Mannion, who, of course, was the founder of the NPC. And I told him, I said, Mr. Mannion, I never did this before. Can you help me out? And he negotiated it for me, I got, a nice chunk of change for the event, flights back over. So there you go. So my career just began to take off then. So,
yeah.
Man, it was a nice payday, awesome experience, and I was on the way after that.
Now, did your physique change a lot throughout that year, Lee? I mean, from the Atlantic USA to the Junior Nationals to the Nationals, did it get better every contest?
I strongly feel it did, because you had at the Mr. USA, 1980 Mr. USA, I weighed 224. Not as much muscle quality I felt as going into the Atlantic USA. I had a lot more muscularity going to the Atlantic USA.
Okay.
Yet I only weighed like 222.
Okay.
So I'm a pound smaller. Then a few months later, going into the
Junior Nationals.
Junior Nationals, I weighed roughly around 224, 223, not a whole lot, maybe a pound here or there. Then going into the NPC Nationals, I weighed 226.
Okay.
So that's on roughly around, since the Atlantic USA to the NPC Nationals, about a period of, I think, probably about 6 months.
Yeah.
At least around 4 pounds.
Okay.
And listen, I was laying brick. At the time. That was my other job, laying brick.
Really?
Plus I was working at I had my gym and laying brick at the same time. So wow. I was shredded to pieces when I hit the NPC Nationals. I actually won the NPC Nationals. I was a bit flat. Coming from one of my friends who helped me out a great deal, and I trained out of his gym, a guy named Michael Hawkins. I trained at the Greenville Athletic Club, Greenville, South Carolina. And he said, Lee, you're a little bit flat. He says, yeah, you won because you were so muscular, but yet you were a bit flat. So anyway, a week later, maybe 2 weeks later, was the IFBB World Championships. And within those 2 weeks, I went from 226 to 232.
Wow.
So I filled out and won the IFBB World Championship at 232 pounds. I looked fuller. The vascularity was still there. The muscles popped a lot more. So I learned a lot
Yeah.
In just that short period of time. You can't train like a horse and eat like a bird. And carbohydrates are not your enemy. You just have to know how to manipulate them in order to get a specific look. And so I was on the way after that. I learned a lot, had grown and put on at least 6 pounds of muscle fuel, glycogen.
Yeah.
Just right. It had to be the right balance, or else the spill would have taken place. The spill didn't happen because, I manipulated the right way. And there you go. Gave me the results. I hit the stage. Bam, there you go. IFBB world champ.
Now, we did an interview a couple years ago at the Southern States, and you said something interesting. We were talking about that period in your life, and you said when you come back in 1982, you're going to shock the world with your physique. So
yeah, sure did, man. You talking about cocky?
Yeah.
Whoa. After I had the surgery back in 1980, I think around 81, I had the surgery right after the placing fourth in the USA.
Okay.
I had to have surgery, and then that after the surgery, the recovery. And so during that recovery time, I had a conversation with my buddies that we trained at the gym together, and of course Shirley, who was my wife now, was my girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
We're sitting there, having a meal, snack during the gym. And I made this statement. I said, in 1982, I will shock the world of bodybuilding. I spoke that in 1980. I said in 1981.
Yeah.
I was on the way to making my comeback. I will shock the world of bodybuilding, because no one has ever really, low town guy coming from nowhere.
Yeah.
Out in California, Ron Koontz and all of these guys from all over the place. They had the magazine coverage, but here I am, this country bumpkin, which nobody ever heard of, other than I slide in and slide out. No real PR going on.
Right.
Stepped out of nowhere. And in 1982, I did that. I hit the stage and, the Atlantic USA, the first time around, the NPC Nationals, Junior Nationals, the first time around, NPC Nationals, the first time around, IFBB World Championship 1982, the first time around. So I did exactly what I spoke that I would do, but believe you me, I worked my tail off for it.
Yeah.
Don't forget, training for the NPC Nationals. Me and Shirley was at the gym late in the evening, and I'm on the bike and training my butt off, and let's see, training my butt off, and I said to her, if I do not win the NPC Nationals, I am going to move into my profession, which was youth counseling.
Okay.
That's what I have my degree in, because I'm a realist. That's the way. I either believe you have it or you don't.
Yeah.
I don't believe in wasting time or wasting energies on things that, that's going to be, some people can do that, And I think the good Lord heard me say it too. He says, okay, son, I'm going to give you this thing. Give you the ability to win it. Because when I said one time and one time only, I meant it. And so I won it the first time around.
Wow.
I wanted the IFBB World Championship the first time around. Olympia, I got it the second time around.
Now going into that Nationals League, looking around at your competition, it was like you said, the first year, so you may not have known any favorites that were going in, but you had Matt Mendenhall, who came out of nowhere. He made a splash at that show. And then you had Bob Paris, who came from California, and also Mike Christian came from California. They had won a lot of shows out there, Mr. Los Angeles, Mr. California, and they were at the Nationals. So looking at your class, you also had Tim Belknap, remember, coming back from 1981, because he was trying to get on that world championship. He was trying to get to the universe again. So looking at these guys, how did you feel you were going to stack up? Were you nervous at all, or did you feel you had them all?
Well, one thing about being on the other side of the world, not in California, they were only photos in the magazine to me.
Yeah.
I've never, I didn't have competition where I lived. Spartanburg, South Carolina, the guys that were buddies to me, like some of the older guys. One guy was Phil Outlaw. He was the world's most muscular man several times. Mm-hmm. He was also the physique chairman of South Carolina at one point. So these are the kind of guys I looked up to and I relied on as far as, setting an example of, and all of them was known to be ripped. I mean, super ripped and muscular. Mm-hmm. That was always their forte, and the mission when they hit the stage. So that same mindset was mine. So comparing to a Christian or Bob Paris or Matt Mendenhall, I never made a comparison as far as, okay, this is who I got to be. I never did that. I've always strived, and at that time strived to be better than I was the last show. Mm-hmm. What I had on my wall, I painted on my wall when I was a youngster, and I made a T-shirt and painted a picture, was Robbie Robinson. Mm-hmm. I felt Robbie was one of the greatest physiques of all time. And I felt that if I could create a physique, small tapering waist, vacuum, nice bicep, flowing lats, nice legs, nice calves, then, I'm at the top of my game.
Yeah.
And everybody else would have to beat that, because that's who the magazine said was the top of the line. I understand, there was Frank Zane, there was Robbie, there was rivalry going on, I think Frank have a different type of physique in a different category.
Yeah.
But when it comes to overall mass, a monster that hits biceps, side, chest, back, that was Robbie Robinson. It wasn't Frank.
Right.
Frank worked hard. Robbie was a monster.
Yeah.
Period. And I felt if I could take that package to the stage, then I was the one to beat.
Yeah. So now going over to the World Championships after you win that Nationals, was that your first time going to Europe?
Yes, yes, it was. Matter of fact, I hadn't gotten a passport or anything until I was urged by Mr. Jim Mannion. He said, Lee, you want to go ahead and get a passport? I said, oh, really? I had no idea,
right.
That that would be a possibility of what was happening. So apparently he saw something of my physique or something in me.
Oh, he said this before the Nationals.
Well, before the Nationals. I think after the Junior Nationals.
Yeah.
He said, did you gotten a passport or anything? Because I wasn't aware that, okay, after you win the Nationals, then you go into the IFBB World Championship. I knew that there's a way to get there, but as far as knowing about a passport, I didn't know anything about that. Right. Nobody ever mentioned that to me until he said it, which I'm glad he did, because I would not have said, Lee, you ready to go? Go where?
So how did that contest go, Lee? You beat Gunnar Rospo, who was second the year before, and you also beat, I think, Ralph Mueller, right? Big Ralph Mueller.
Oh man, Rolf was the biggest guy I ever seen in my life. He was he was a monster. We're great friends even today, but it was awesome experience standing on the stage in a whole nother country
Yeah.
with guys from everywhere competing against each other,
Yeah.
and speaking different languages. And what was funny, I never will forget, we saw a lot of the European guys right before going on stage. We saw them sipping on wine.
Oh, really?
So here's Lee Haney, Jimmy Gobert, Moses Maldonado, and Dare Ripplinger. And we was watching all of this is going on.
Uh-huh.
I said, well, why are you guys sipping on wine? I said, man, well, it brings out more vascularity. I said, oh, really? So let me try that, So I took a little sip of wine. Man, I was so dizzy because it was something that us American guys, we never heard of that before.
Right, right.
And I just said, oh, please, don't let me stumble while I'm on stage because it was that bad, but it was an awesome experience. And we made friends for life.
Yeah.
I Facebook Guna Rose Bowl
Oh, really?
a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And buried in May. So thanks to the modern day, media technology,
Yeah.
we can still reach out and say hello and exchange pictures, find out what we're all doing. Is Dad's Guna is now Grandpa.
Really?
So it's amazing.
Wow, that's great. And you guys had a great pose down at that show too. You were all over the
Oh,
stage.
yeah, I never will get the picture of me and Rolf Mueller. Rolf got his hand on my shoulder, almost on my head, and I was a little bitty guy. And we're doing these leg shots and pose downs together.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. That's one of my most memorable experiences is winning that IFBB World Championship and standing on stage with guys from all over the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Now, when did you first meet Joe Weider? Was it right after that show?
Yes, after that show, Bill Reynolds, who was editor-in-chief of Muscle and Fitness at the time, gave me a call and said he would love for me to come out to California, and Joe would love to see and meet me and so forth. And so they sent a ticket. I jumped on the plane, went out there, and walking to the Weider Center was absolutely incredible. I mean, everyone wanted to meet Joe Weider because it was the magazine that got all of us excited, that helped educate us, and it was absolutely amazing. And I'm standing there, you know, prior to meeting Joe, and Bill is there in the office. I'm standing there with Bill, and then he said, "Oh, Lee," I was telling him that one of my favorite guys was Robbie Robinson. He said, "Well, Lee, Robbie is here today." I said, "Oh, really?" He said, "Yes, I'd love to introduce you to him." And so Robbie was standing just not too far down the hall, and so Bill took me down to meet Robbie. I shook his hand and said hello. I still have an autographed dollar. I had Robbie to put his name on a dollar.
Oh, really?
I still have it today. That was incredible. And he said to me, he said, "Lee, I was at home." You know, Robbie don't talk a lot, you know.
Yeah.
He has a sort of a quiet, reserved nature. But he said, "Lee, I was at home, you know, resting, and I heard my wife yell out, 'Hey, baby, come quick, come check out the TV.' He said, 'There's somebody on him that reminds me a lot of you.'" And it was a picture of me at one of the shows, one of the physique shows that they were televising. And he reminded me of that. Wow. He said, when I saw that, I said, "That guy does look like me." So anyway, that was the ultimate compliment coming from Robbie.
Yeah. So now you start your pro career right away in 1983, and you do the Pro World Championships in Atlantic City, right, in New Jersey.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was awesome. Matter of fact, Greg DeFaro was there. I think Johnny Fuller.
Yeah. Muhammad McAway won it.
Right? Muhammad McAway.
Yeah.
Magical Egyptian, and of course he won the event. And I think I took third, I believe.
Yeah, and Robbie was in it too, right? Wasn't Robbie in it?
I think Robbie was.
Yeah.
But that was amazing for me because here I am standing on stage with guys that had read about them in the magazines. They were people that I looked up to and admired, and there I am. You know, I was the youngest there. You know, I was sort of like the new kid on the block.
Yeah.
And just so blown away with what I was experiencing at that time. And at the end of the day, I got a little check, you know. I was able to take some money home, and that was good. I'd like to have won the event, but there were some things that I needed to work on, you know. At that time, you know, you as a youngster, you think, hey, I look at my posing routine, you know, looking at it, I said, wow, I needed a whole lot of work.
And that was a great event, too, because it was on TV. It was on CBS, I think, and Arnold was there. And
yes, that's right. It was, man, that was awesome. I love that. They're in Canada. I think Montreal, I believe.
Okay.
I think it was Montreal, yeah. It was awesome.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And so that right after that, then you do the Night of the Champions in New York, which was a really big show, and you win. You beat Greg DeFaro, and you beat a lot of the guys that were in that show also.
Yeah, that was awesome because, matter of fact, a week before that, me and Shirley had just gotten married.
Oh, really? That's right.
Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah.
Just
okay.
Married, and after winning the New York Night of Champions, they gave me a little extra cash. So we took off to Hawaii to do a guest appearance for Mitch and Dottie.
Yeah.
It was great friends of Arnold, and they were just awesome and huge as far as developing bodybuilding in Hawaii.
Right.
So they were dear friends of mine and Shirley's, you know, both of his past. But I never will forget that experience. But yeah, the New York Night of Champions was awesome.
Yeah.
So to win that show, as you know, during that time, you had the Mr. Olympia and the New York Night of Champions. There was other shows like the World Cup Grand Prix, but the New York Night of Champions was very special.
Right. Now, were you living in California then, Lee, or were you still in South Carolina?
I was in California then.
Yeah.
In California then, and when we got married, we Shirley went home 2 weeks before our wedding date, which was May 14th, 1983, 2 weeks before that. And I came home a week prior. We got married, then hit New York and won that, and then hit Hawaii. So we're on the way after that.
Wow. All right, so then we go into your first Mr. Olympia in 1983 over in Munich, Germany. And how were your feelings going into that show? It's your first Mr. Olympia. Were you, did you feel like you were going to be one of the top guys? Were you looking at any other guys thinking they might, they're the guys you have to watch out for?
Well, that first Mr. Olympia was, it was really challenging. The other things, okay, we just rolled with the punches, and then the New York Night of Champions gave me, a big boost of confidence.
Yeah.
And hey, I can stand on stage with the pros, and I gained a bit of experience. But what happened at the New York Night of Champions goes back to the lack of experience as far as I feel my placing. Well, a couple of things. I peaked 4 weeks prior to the New York Night, before the first Olympia, at 243 pounds.
Wow.
Arnold saw me at World's Gym, and he was amazed. He said, "Lee, how are you looking this well 4 weeks away from the show?" He said, "You look like in peak condition now." And I was. Did I mean to be? I don't know. What happened at that point, I went into the show, which was a month later. My weight came from 243 down to 233. I dropped 10 pounds. 10 pounds of hard-earned muscle.
Yeah.
So no longer did I have that nice, balanced, pump full look. I had I had flat line.
Yeah.
At 233 pounds, that was only 3 pounds more than I weighed when I won the IFBB World Championship a whole year later.
Right.
So all of the hard-earned muscle I gained in all seasons to prepare for that show, I ended up losing.
Right.
Because of the lack of experience. And I always go back to say to a lot of the athletes, you cannot train like a horse and eat like a bird. I wasn't experienced and knowing that as your intensity level increase, so much your nutrition increase.
Yeah.
And you have to make sure to make adjustments in your protein and in particular carbohydrate balance.
Yeah.
As metabolic rate speeds up.
Right.
So I lacked that experience, lacked knowing my body at that particular time. And so as a result of being too structured, because a lot of what I did in the past was, yes, I kept notes. I wrote down what I did right and maybe what I did wrong.
Right.
But I still didn't have the knowledge to make adjustments as far as, okay, I started out on 3,000 calories. Now all of a sudden I'm dropping weight. Maybe I need to increase it by another 300 calories or 500 calories.
Mm-hmm.
Without, and not making adjustments is what I know without a doubt that got me in trouble.
Yeah, yeah.
Because your body will give you signals, the mirror will give you signals. You just have to be willing to make the adjustment. And at that time, I think because of the intensity of the meet and the importance, let's say, of the Mr. Olympia, and going into the first pro Mr. Olympia was like mind-boggling.
Yeah, yeah.
And so a lot of the common sense things went out of the window.
Okay, yeah.
So I said, oh no, this is the plan. I wrote it. I'm going to stay with it. I don't care what come hell or hot water.
Right.
I'm going to stay with those 3,000 calories. I don't care if it kill me. And it almost did. So there you go. So it was a bit stressful. I did know that I would be standing on stage with Frank Zane, which, incredible, with Burl Fox, which was incredible. And I tried looking for that extra special angle. But going into the show, hey, I placed third in my first Mr. Olympia.
Yeah, and
which wasn't bad at all.
You beat Frank Zane and you beat Burl Fox. Yeah.
And as I sure did. So I wasn't totally disappointed, but I was disappointed at the fact that I knew I was 10 pounds heavier 4 weeks prior to that.
Yeah.
At the after party, which the show took place in Munich, Germany, this was put on by Mr. Albert Busak, which did an incredible job. I was sitting at the table, sort of away from the party, just sitting there, me and Shirley. And Arnold walked over and said to me, he said, "Lee, you have a fantastic physique, a lot of potential in the world." He said, "But the one thing I saw that you lacked," and he didn't mention the fact he saw me 243 to 233. Maybe even at 233, I had what was needed to win that first show. But the thing that he saw, and nothing negative about my physique, don't say, "Well, Lee, you were flat." He didn't say none of that.
Yeah.
He said, "Your presentation lacked polish." That's what he said. And I believe 100% what he said was right on point. Because when you hit the stage with Frank Zane, Muhammad McCoway, Albert Beckles, all of these veterans, you better have yourself together. Yeah. And there's nowhere in the world at the age of 23, and that was my age, as my first Olympiad. Nowhere in the world that I had that type of experience. It wasn't there.
Yeah.
It wasn't enough time. I hadn't prepared myself. I mean, you're talking about guys who have been posing for 20 years or more.
Yeah.
You're wearing Huggies, Nummer
8. Die Startnummer 9, Lee Haney aus den USA.
Oh yeah.
So what Arnold said to me, he said, Lee, once we get back to California, I want to introduce you to my posing coach. Because when she worked with you and get you better in your transitions and positioning your presentation, you'll be Mr. Olympia as long as you want to be.
Wow.
I took that advice, and I'm grateful till today for what Arnold said to me and the pointers that he gave me. So when I got back to California, I met Arnold at his office, and his posing coach was there, and he helped me, she helped me, and the rest was history.
I didn't know Arnold had a posing coach.
Yeah, sure did.
Wow.
You know, you watch the way Arnold moved, transition.
Oh, yeah.
He always talked about posing big. When you're a big guy, you should pose big. You should take up the whole stage.
Right.
So these corners that he gave me. So when I did my 3/4 back, I was always spinning and opening up real wide and move with movement.
Right.
You know, a lot of guys I see posing today, I see giants posing like Lita Brada.
Yeah.
Or like Rich. You're not Lita Brada, you're not Rich. Lee poses to the best of his ability and have an incredible physique, but he stays in line with who he is. He's sort of a Frank Zane style, or Muhammad Makawi style. So that's what he presents. You know, I'm more of an Arnold and a Robbie Robinson style, so I have to present big poses because I'm a bigger guy.
Right, right.
You know, so you see a lot of that today. I see big guys who just, their mindsets, I don't know, I guess you got a Rottweiler that thinks he's a Chihuahua. And it looks like it on stage, too.
Yeah. You mentioned Arnold. How was that meeting Arnold for the first time when you went out to California?
Oh, it was incredible. You know, I met him first when I won the IFBB World Championship.
Okay.
Because he was a commentator there.
Oh, okay.
It was very, very nice and always very helpful. He told me, Lee, you get to California, if there's anything you need, if I can help you in any way, you let me know.
Wow.
And so always been that way. And we still have an awesome relationship even today. You know, he'll fly to Atlanta, and that's where I am now. I'm in Atlanta. Arnold was part of what is called the Inner City Games.
Right.
So he headed up that particular organization, which is now after school program for kids.
Right.
But he would call, I have his team to call, then we'd meet up and go hit some of the inner city schools. So, I really appreciate his heart and what he does beyond, just the bodybuilding world. He does it because of community-wide things that help young people.
Yeah, that's great. So now we go into 1984, and this is you took the whole year off. You only competed in the Olympia, and you also started training with Rich Gaspari that year, right?
Oh, yeah. Matter of fact, Rich lived with me in Shirley for a period of time there at my home. Rich, he was a young bodybuilder, met him there at Gold's Gym in Reseda, because we both lived in Sherman, we call it more Woodland Hills, not far from the Weeder Center.
Okay.
So we sort of became good friends, and, he had just gotten to California from Jersey, and he stayed with me and Shirley for a while to help him out, help get him going. He was just a great person, so we became good buddies. His intensity level was out of this world, so Rich was one of the best training partners I've ever had.
Yeah.
If you know anything about Rich Gaspari, you know that he's intense. He's intense in everything that he do, from bodybuilding to business.
Right.
That's why he always wins, or he'll find a way to win.
Right.
And so it was great training with Rich, and to see him win the NPC Nationals, and then for myself to go on to win the first Mr. Olympia, that was an awesome combination. But little did I know, a few years later, he'll be knocking on my door. So it was almost like sleeping with the enemy.
Right.
I showed him a little too much,
Right.
But Rich, as far as the Olympians are concerned, I felt had the smallest amount, or the least amount of genetic gifts, but he had the biggest heart and the most determination.
Yeah.
It Rich and compared to Matt Mendenhall, and I've trained with Matt Mendenhall. Rich would have Matt Mendenhall between a piece of bread for lunch. peanut butter spread on him and eat him alive and leave nothing left.
Right.
That was the difference. Matt had all the genetic potential. Rich had all of the heart. If I would have put Rich hard inside of Matt, and Matt would have gave me the hardest of times.
Yeah.
Because he was a real life He-Man.
Yeah.
But he had the heart of a pussycat. That was, he's my buddy, but hey, I got to call it like I see it. Rich, on the other hand, he would eat you up and spit you out. You sort of remind me, today's athlete remind me of Branch Warren.
Yeah.
Branch is like,
right.
Branch terrorizes, Got a different kind of physique.
Right.
Totally different than mine, of the past. But what he has, and he takes it to the max.
Yeah.
Don't get in his way.
You told this story a couple of years ago when they had that Masters Olympia, and they had all you guys on stage, and you were telling a story about how a bunch of the guys from your gym wanted to beat up Rich because he was so intense. He was throwing weights around and stuff.
Yeah, Rich was so intense, man. But when I say intense, he wasn't a nice guy at the gym. If you get in his way, he's going to tell you, "Get away from here, bum." I've heard him say that, Guys walk up here, "Get away from him. We're trying to move out of the way." He's like that. You don't get in his way.
Right.
I warned him a lot. I said, "Rich, you just can't do that, man. You got to calm down a little bit." But, he got that Italian blood in him, man. He was never calm. He was always wired. He had a job to do and a vision.
Right.
And let nobody get in his way. And I never forget, I'm coming to the gym this evening to train, get a workout in. And I walk into a crowd of guys. I see all the guys at the gym, so they're standing on the outside. They're having this conversation. I walk in the middle of the crowd and say, "Hey, what's going on, guy?" They say, "We talking about your training partner." Then the first thing I said, "What did he do now?" I knew he had to do something. So, man, they said, "We're going to get him this evening." I said, "Man, don't get him. What did he? We tired of the way he talking to people. He's rude, and we're going to put us into this." I mean, these are a bunch of guys with muscles, too.
Right.
I'm talking about Pee Wee Herman here. These guys have muscles. I said, "Look, guy, don't beat him up. He's just a kid." I said, "Look, let me talk to him. And just give me a chance." They said, "Okay, you better talk to him. If not, it's going to be it for him." I said, "Man, I'm going to talk to him. Don't beat him up. Please don't beat him up." Because of my diplomacy, all the guys, I was friends with everybody. All the guys loved me.
Right.
We laughed and so forth. Anyway, Rich never knew it happened. He never knew it happened until I mentioned it at the Legend seminar. I said, "Rich almost got killed one time." He said, "Oh, really? What happened?" And I told him the story. But I did tell him, I said, "Look, Rich," after that, I said, "Man, listen, you have to learn to communicate differently. When you're in the gym, man, you're not the only one here. So you have to use diplomacy, and you got to be courteous. If not, that's going to not only impact you in the gym, it's going to impact your business life too."
Yeah.
Because, it's your fans and people who like you that'll buy your products. So you got to change your whole mindset. And believe you me, you look at the Rich now compared to the Rich back then, it's two different people. So he's became extremely successful in business, extremely successful in his social etiquette.
Right.
So he's a different guy. But still somewhere inside of him lurks a monster. He just knows how to control him better.
Well, when I did an interview with Rich, he told me that training with you really changed his training style because he was training really heavy, he was bulking up, and he was training super intense. And you showed him how to feel the muscle more, and as you always say, stimulate, don't annihilate the muscles.
Exactly. Rich has a new book out, 51 Days, and he has a chapter in there called Fat Boy. That's what I called him when I first met him. He was all bulked up, and I said,
Right.
"Well, fine." I said, "You train hard, you're intense." I said, "But you're a fatso." I said, "And you can't flex fat." So we started, working on some different things, and teaching him the philosophy of feeling the muscle, mind and the muscle link.
Right.
And that you can get what you're looking for out of a muscle without ripping it apart.
Right.
And you see a lot of that in bodybuilding today where guys are getting injured. You can see bicep tears, pec tears, quad tears, all this ridiculous stuff.
Right.
But you look at, you say old school bodybuilding, new school, listen. When you look at the bodybuilders of the past, you didn't hear about Arnold tearing a bicep, or Frank tearing a bicep, or, you know, Mike Mincer tearing a bicep, you know, any of the Mike Cats, all of them got robbed. You never heard of that.
Right.
Because they were, and I say we, because I learned from those great Olympians to link the mind and the muscle together, you know, to stimulate. It doesn't take that much to stimulate a muscle. 75% of what you put is what you put in your mouth. Stimulate the muscle and then feed it. So you don't have to rip it apart because you want it to be there again tomorrow too.
Right.
When you get injured, you're not going to be able to train.
Right.
So you don't want that to happen. So that philosophy I ingrained in Rich, and he took it to the max. We were together a few weeks ago in San Jose, and Rich looked great even then. I mean, every time you see Rich, he looks great. I used to call him the professor. He wrote down everything that he would eat, his supplement program. Everything was just so regimented with Rich and thought out.
Yeah.
And I strongly feel that the training approach that Rich and I use, and the one that I instilled in him, has allowed us to be healthy even today. But then when I saw Mike Christian in great health, I saw Sean Ray in great health, I saw Flex Wheeler in great health, I saw Chris Cormier. None of us were limping with back injuries, knee injuries, hip injuries. We were all in great health, and that was something good to see.
Yeah.
You know, we all in good health. None of us said, well, man, I have a knee replacement, or I had a hip replacement, I had back surgery, or neck surgery, you know, because of using the right training philosophies.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, thank you for joining us for part one of our interview with Lee Haney. Join us next time on the Bodybuilding Legends Show, where Lee will talk about competing in the Mr. Olympia contest, winning it a record 8 times, and all the competitors that he competed against and all of his experiences in the bodybuilding world. It's going to be a great interview with one of the best ever, Mr. Lee Haney. Thanks for joining us for the Bodybuilding Legends Show. We'll see you next time.